The Kathleen Eaton Lifesaver Award, presented to Lila Rose for exceptional service, Christian witness, and inspiring courage in saving lives and changing lives. This date, July 11th, 2011. Congratulations, Lila, and thank you. And this is all yours now.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here this evening and letting me crash the golf tournament. I've never played formal golf, only mini golf, but I was very impressed with all the photos we saw up here. And for the person that won the F-16 fighter jet dive plane dogfighting, talk to me afterwards because I'd love to try to find a way onto that plane. Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. But I hail from Northern California. I just graduated from UCLA. So are there any Bruins in the room? Okay, good. Very proud Bruin. I majored in history. And I am from San Jose, California, so Bay Area, and I'm one of 8 children. And the other part of my story that I want to share is I just recently was received into the Catholic Church 2 years ago. So I'm very, very blessed, and just a few months after I was received, my mother returned to the church, and my 4 youngest siblings came into the church as well. So we're slowly becoming one of those big Catholic families, convert by convert, so very, very blessed. But I'm here to talk to you tonight about what I've given my life to, which is the culture of life, and reclaiming our great nation and reclaiming our young people for life and ultimately for love for Jesus Christ. And this is a mission that I've been on since I was a young girl, and when I first found out about abortion in our nation, I'll share a little bit of that journey, but also just to talk to you briefly, I know it's getting later, but talk to you a little bit about some of the things that our nation faces. And many of you may know some of this, but what challenges our country today, and especially what challenges our young people, the other side of the street from clinics like birth choice clinics, what our young people are going in increasing numbers, and how we need to expose the reality of abortion, what it does to that unborn child, what it does to that innocent unborn child, and what it does to women, what it does to young women, what it does to families, and ultimately how it's devastating our country. The image of Mother Teresa that was bidded for, what a beautiful painting, or sketching, drawing. But Mother Teresa, whenever she had the opportunity to speak publicly, and she was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, and she was so well known all across and well respected for her work with the lonely, with the lepers, with the hungry. But Mother Teresa, whenever she had the opportunity, she would speak unequivocally about abortion as the greatest destroyer of peace in the world. And she called abortion the greatest destroyer of peace because she said, in a nation where a mother can kill her own child, what is left but for you and for I to kill one another? She's challenging us, and she said this to America at a national prayer breakfast, I think in 1994, to President Clinton and his wife. But she said this is a challenge to our great nation, that if we are going to stand true, hold true, faithfully to that principle of guarding the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but that fundamental right to life, if we're going to hold true to that principle, which we built this whole wonderful nation on, then we have to hold true to protecting the right to life of the weakest and of the most vulnerable, our unborn brothers and sisters. And we're living right now in a time of great crisis. And I know many issues face us as Americans, as Catholics, as my mothers and fathers, for those that have children here, as grandparents, as brothers and sisters, whatever it might be. We face a lot of issues in our world, a lot of problems, a lot of things we hear about on the news, on TV. But at the end of the day, as Mother Teresa is telling us, if we can't protect the weakest among us, if we don't protect those that are most vulnerable, then what is left to save? And that's why I've given my life to this work, to end abortion in our country, change hearts and minds, change the law, end abortion, and build a culture of life where everybody is respected and protected. When I was 9 years old, this is how I first got involved, so to speak. I was raised in this wonderful family. I was very blessed to have 7 brothers and sisters, definitely a rowdy upbringing. I was in between 5 brothers, So I didn't have, a sister till I was about 10 years old, and I prayed every night for a sister because I grew up kind of a tomboy and, in a rough crowd, so to speak. But I grew up being taught to respect, to love life, and taught that to serve ultimately, that our life was for more than ourselves. And when I was 9 years old, I found this book in our home. I love to read, and I was looking for a book one day, and I found a book in our living room on the bottom shelf I pulled it out, it looked really interesting to me, and by chance, and it said, A Handbook on Abortion by Dr. and Mrs. Wilkie. And I looked at the book, and it looked very old. The cover had this, serious-looking woman on it, and I thought, this is old. It must be from the 80s or something, this old-fashioned cover. I was born in 88, so no offense, but to me, it was very old. And the book fell open to the center where it was creased, and there were these images there. And I looked at this image, and in shock and horror, I closed the book and I pushed it away. And then, bringing up a little courage and curiosity, I brought the book back, and I opened it, and I looked. And what I was looking at was the image of a tiny child in the first trimester, maybe 10 weeks old, with little arms and little legs and a little tiny face that had been the victim of a first trimester abortion. And as I looked at that image, I thought, in my 9-year-old perception, how could anybody do this to a baby? Is this real? Is this really happening? And I went and found my mother in my house, and I showed it to her, and I said, is this real? Is this really happening? And she closed the book, and she said, yes, and that's abortion. As I got older and I learned about other things, and I went to school and I got involved in different activities, speech and debate and acting and singing and all these different things, but I kept coming back to abortion as this evil that was happening around me. And I learned that there were over 3,000 of them in our country. And I learned back in 1973, before I was even born, that Supreme Court justices somehow legalized abortion on demand. And now the abortion rate was skyrocketing. There are now over 54 million abortions in our country since that date. And as I learned more and more, I realized that almost 1/3 of my generation has been killed by abortion. And as I got older, I would say to God, I would pray, get on my knees and say, Lord, use me. Use me somehow to make a difference. Use me somehow to save lives, because so many lives were unsafe. And it's a dangerous prayer to ask our Lord to use you in a time of crisis, because he will, because we are his hands and his feet, and we each have a call on our lives to live out our faith as courageously as we can muster, but to live out our faith in love for others and service to others. And what better service than to go to those that are orphaned by the very people that should be protecting them, their mothers and their fathers, orphaned and are in danger of being killed in our own communities, in our own neighborhoods sometimes, near to our own churches where we worship, where the Holy Eucharist is sometimes. This is what we're living amongst in the very nation that's designated, that has been consecrated before God to that right to life for all people. So as I got older, I was a teen. I started up a pro-life club in my living room. I didn't really know anything about pro-life activities or pro-life activism. It was kind of a faraway world in Washington, D.C. that I read about on the internet. But I started to learn more, and I started to educate, working with other young people to educate other young people. I thought if we could just get the truth in front of other young people, then we could change hearts and minds. And we saw it. We would give these presentations in high schools, and we give these presentations in youth groups about abortion. We talk about chastity. We talk about ultimately that evil of abortion, what it does to that unborn child, how it affects women and families. And we would see young people just say, I didn't know, and now I'm pro-life. What can I do? How can I get involved? Because deep down, young people are pro-life. We were born pro-life. And if we can get the facts to them before the other side does with the truth about life, then they're some of the best advocates ever. And their energy and willingness to abandon themselves to a great cause, their willingness to go all out for life is incredible. So now I am 22 years old, turning 23 at the end of the month, but I'm blessed to, over the past 5 years, to stand with a growing coalition of young people from across the country who are not taking no for an answer, who are tired of the apathy and tired of the lies, who want to stand up to the truth and tell the truth to their peers and speak truth to politicians, speak truth into the media, use social media as a tool, I'll talk about that in a minute, to speak truth to each other about what abortion does to a child, how it's a human rights abuse, about what abortion does to a woman, a young woman, about all the other abuses that accompany that ultimate abuse of abortion, and teaching about respect for each other, not only for that unborn child, but respect for our own bodies, the message of chastity, and encouraging each other to stand up and live with dignity, live with nobility. That's what we're all called to do. And it's amazing to see how young people respond to that message, how hungry and thirsty they are in this broken society that we live in to respond to that message. It is so exciting. The video that you saw on the screen just before the bidding that we did, the second part of the bidding, was an undercover video of Planned Parenthood, of a clinic in New Jersey. That video stands among several dozen videos, several dozen clinics that we've released, our organization Live Action. Live Action has released over the past 4 years undercover footage of the abortion industry and lobby in the United States. And this grew out of that gathering in my living room when I was 15, of young people getting together and saying, what can we do about abortion? How can we educate people? And it's been a lot of twists and turns on the journey to get to the place where now we are influencing directly politics, where we have the biggest social media movement online of young people, over 80,000 young people online working to reach other people through social media. We have our magazine on over 300 college and high school campuses, speaking truth directly to students, passed out, distributed by students, and all the while developing programs, creative, investigative programs to go to where the evil is taking place, where the abuse is taking place in the abortion industry and lobby, and to get it on film, and then to distribute that through social media, because the social media is so powerful because it cannot be censored, right, by educational institutions that don't want to hear the truth about abortion. It can't be censored by certain TV networks that don't want to talk about abortion or tell the truth about abortion, but you can get people directly in front of their laptops through YouTube with the truth. And so that was the strategy we began to develop 4 years ago when I did my first undercover investigation. The story goes like this. I was in Los Angeles. I'm a college student. It's my freshman year at UCLA. I chose the school, by the way, not only because I love the Bruins, but also because I wanted to reach those students for life. I knew there were 40,000 young people at the school, and I thought, hey, this is a great campus full of people that need the truth about abortion and about the pro-life message. So I went there very strategically in a way to start a pro-life group and see how I could reach other young people, leaving the pro-life chapter of Live Action in the Bay Area. Now we have chapters all over the state of California, but wanting to start it at UCLA as well, bring it there. And my first undercover investigation of a Planned Parenthood clinic was born out of thinking, okay, I've heard about the different illegal activities that might happen at these clinics, the failure to report statutory rape, for example. In Los Angeles, a police detective called me, and this was just a few months ago after we released a recent project, and he told me that in his years, and he was at the Bureau for Sexual Abuse, and he received the reports from school teachers, from parents, from concerned neighbors about sexual abuse. In his years of overseeing a five-team person of detectives as a senior detective, he had never received a report from an abortion clinic. And abortion clinics are where abusers take young girls who've been sexually abused to cover up the evidence of the crime. But that detective was telling me, he was responding to the videos he saw online because he wanted to tell me about his story, was telling me this to further provide the reality to me, or to show me that it's true. These abortion clinics are not reporting sexual abuse. This, by the way, is one of the many aspects of the culture of death at large in our country. How, because of abortion, because of the disrespect for human life, and because we allow this long leash for abortion clinics to prey ultimately on those that are vulnerable and to build partnerships with the abusers, those that coerce women and hurt women. And so my first undercover project was when I was 18. I'm a freshman at UCLA. I wanted to find out if sexual abuse was actually happening at these clinics, the cover-up of statutory rape. I posed as a 15-year-old girl. I had a whole camcorder put in my bag. This was my first shot at investigative journalism, okay? And since then, we've gotten a little more high-tech. We have police-quality undercover equipment now, and we have a whole system and program for how we do this. But at the beginning, it was just me and a friend with a camcorder in my purse to see what the clinic, the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, would tell me if I posed as a victim of statutory rape. They had the requirement under California law to report that immediately to police. But what would they say to me? Walked into the clinic. It's a clinic where there's they do abortions there. I remember looking at all these women sitting in this waiting room, many of them looking sad or unhappy. I remember as I looked at them, this was my first time inside an abortion clinic. As I looked at them, my heart's pounding, I'm nervous, but I looked at these women, and I remember thinking that I wasn't just looking at one life, But when I looked at these women, I was looking at 2 lives for many of them. And on that day in that clinic, it was abortion day at the clinic, that child would be killed, would be destroyed. And on the wall of this clinic, this Planned Parenthood clinic, it said Esperanza, or hope in Spanish. And I thought, this must be one of the most hopeless places in all of Los Angeles. I went up to the check-in counter. I said to the woman, "Can I talk to someone?" She said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I'm 15. And she said, "And?" And I said, "Well, he's a lot older." She said, "Oh, okay." She took me behind the check-in counter. She said, "He's a lot older." I said, "Yeah, what should I do?" Implying I needed help, implying I was pregnant. This is a situation of abuse. And she said to me, "Just figure out a birth date that works. Lie in the paperwork. Say that you're older than you really are. No one will know about the abortion, and no one will know about this relationship. We won't tell anybody. We'll sign you up for an abortion right away." That was my first piece of advice at a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic. Since that first investigation, I have been inside dozens of clinics across the country. I now train investigators to do projects similar to that one to demonstrate other kinds of abusive activity that happens, medical misinformation, coercive counseling, ultimately the eugenicist background of Planned Parenthood, how they targeted, from day one, their founder targeted minorities and those that she thought were unfit to live, unfit to procreate. And also, just recently, one of our latest projects demonstrating that Planned Parenthood is even willing to go as far, because they ultimately do not take sexual abuse seriously, they're even going to go as far as aiding and abetting those that commercially sell the bodies of young girls for sex. The Department of Justice says that there might be 300,000 children trafficked in our country every year, many of them domestic victims. And what happens to these victims when inevitably many of them get pregnant? They're taken to a clinic that asks no questions, a clinic that will cover up the abuse, and those are these Planned Parenthood clinics. Planned Parenthood does over 1/4 of all the abortions in our country. They're the biggest political lobby for abortion. Right now they receive over $300 million taxpayer dollars, money that's being poured into a clinic that has upped their abortion numbers every year for the past over 10 years. Even while national abortion rates are static or might even decrease, they're upping their abortion rates. They're cornering the market, cornering their share of the market for abortion. This is an abortion-minded organization, and that's ultimately what these videos all demonstrate. Our videos demonstrate that because of this abortion-first ideology, women's health, women's protection, the protection of young girls is thrown to the wayside, and it's about upping their abortion numbers. On our research team, and I'm just so blessed to work with a fantastic team of young people from all across the country. And on our research team is a woman named Abby Johnson. She just turned 31 actually yesterday, but Abby used to work at a Planned Parenthood clinic. She was the director of a clinic in Texas, and for 7 years she worked there. She received the Employee of the Year award from Planned Parenthood in 2008, and in 2009 she quit. She left the clinic, she left her work at the abortion clinic, at the Planned Parenthood clinic, and she ultimately joined the pro-life movement. She joined our side. One of the reasons she joined our side was because she says they were telling her that they had an abortion quota to meet, and that they would up the abortion numbers. That was the way the clinic, 40% of clinic income is abortion. That's how they were going to make their money ultimately and keep the clinic operating through abortion, to up the numbers, even while they talk about prevention and all of these other things. So Abby now speaks boldly about the value of life, about the dignity of the unborn child, and she helps us develop projects to ultimately investigate these abortion clinics. To share some quick results for you, it's a very exciting time in our organization's history, in the pro-life movement right now, in our nation's history. Right now, for the first time in over 30 years, we have seen the most wonderful defunding efforts and pro-life legislative efforts in this past year than we have seen in over 30 years. And I think a lot of it has to do with the pro-life youth in our country that are rising up, and the fact that the truth is coming out on video, breaking through people, through traditional walls. It's even being played on through mainstream media. Because of social media, and because when we release these videos they get out through social media, then the news media starts picking it up. And so even CBS Nightly News was airing these videos showing Planned Parenthood's abuse cover-up. And so in the last few months, we've seen 6 states now defund Planned Parenthood, stop those government contracts, up to $60 million being taken away from the biggest abortion chain in the country. Good progress. And you know, it's just begun. The house of cards is just beginning to fall. even as more and more young people join this cause for life. We're getting requests every day from young people who want to join the team, who want to collaborate with us, who want to start pro-life groups on their campuses. So we're seeing incredible movements for life, and I firmly believe that as we expose the truth and as we reach the next generation, reach our youth with the truth, we will see a pro-life America. We will see an end to abortion in our lifetime. My life is dedicated to this, but not only my life, but many other lives. More and more people who want to be in this battle for life and want to see real results. And we're seeing those real results. Live action, everything that we've done in the past 4 years has been pilot projecting, finding strategies that work to reach young people, the most effective ways to convince them. Getting young people at UCLA, I remember passing out our pro-life magazine, The Advocate, and showing one young man, and he just opened it up and he looked at some of the images, he read a few things, and he saw an image of the victim of abortion, of that unborn child. And he closed the magazine and he told one of our girls, he said, "I was on the fence about abortion, but now I'm pro-life." That's the kind of instant conversions that we see when they're given the truth, when they're given the facts about what abortion does, and they're given some of the truth, an inside peek into the abortion industry and lobby. And so now the dream, the lofty vision, is to definitely in the next 5 years, we want to not only see an end to these government contracts of the biggest abortion chain in our country, but we want to raise a coalition of 10 million youth through social media who are reached with the truth, who are inspired by the truth, have the truth at their disposal, and then can be activated to then reach other young people in their churches, in their schools, and on their school campuses. This is the vision that we have, and this is the work that we've just begun to do. And I just graduated college. We're all in. we're going all out. We're all committed. A great team. We're building our team right now. We're based up in Northern California, but we're often in LA, and we have chapters all over the country. We have chapters still at UCLA, but we're working now so hard to see this vision become a reality. And I firmly believe, and it is our faith that instructs us that this is true, that when we give our lives to do as He would have us to do, when we say yes to Him, as our mother, as the Virgin Mary said yes to God when she was such a young girl, facing her own unexpected pregnancy, right? And she embraced that new life, our Lord Jesus Christ, but she also said to the Father, "Let it be done unto me according to thy word." And when she opened herself up to do His will, the grace upon grace upon grace that she received as she became the life bearer, the Theotokos, the God bearer for all of us, that example teaches us that when we say yes to God, and I've seen this in the adventure that my own life has been, beyond what I would have ever have imagined at 15, the adventure that my life has been, because when we say yes to God and when we offer ourselves as a living sacrifice to do His will, we can see the greatest miracles take place. We become part of a supernatural effort that cannot fail. And more than any one of us could desire goodness and justice for our nation, God desires it for our nation. And God desires it for our unborn brothers and sisters. And so when we partner with groups like Birth Choice, when we stand alongside them with the ultrasound machine to show women the truth about what happens, is happening inside their womb, that beautiful little life. When we stand up to help those young people, speak the truth to the other young people, reach other young people with the truth, when we expose the truth about what happens inside the abortion industry and lobby, when we make these efforts to stand up for life, anything is possible. And that's why I believe with my whole heart that we're going to see a day in my lifetime, very soon, when our nation will see enormous changes. Generationally, in my generation, enormous changes, a passion for life being awakened in them, and a rejection of all of the brokenness that we've been born into. That's the America that I envision, and I believe it's happening right now with this pro-life legislation, the defunding efforts, birth choice. It's amazing what's happening. The Holy Spirit is on the move. So let's all be a part of this great effort for life, because we will build that beautiful life, that life of ultimately respecting each other, laying down our lives for each other in our great country, as we once committed our nation to do, building on the right to life for all people. Thank you so much for having me here this evening.